Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. Welcome back to another episode of World Bigfoot Radio. And of course, you're listening to The Duke. And once again, I have my favorite guest of the day, one of my favorite guests to ever have on the show. Khat Hansen is back, and we're going to complete the conversation that we started in the last episode, and we're going to pick it up right where we left off, and that was that I was talking about the mountain giants, and we were talking about signs of mountain giants, and we had gotten on the subject of giant things that they make, and we were mentioning over in the Skulkaho where we found this 50-foot-high X structure made out of two entire lodgepole pines with the bark ripped off one of them and all of the branches ripped out both of them. Neither one of them from where they were at moved on top of this 10-foot-high embankment, put into place, making this giant X marker. And nothing else seemed to be on that side of the river, although there was plenty of Bigfoot signs on the other side. There was tree structures all over the place and lots of tracks. So we went further up the actual ravine. There's sort of a valley there that is a river flowing about 2/3 of the way toward the east, and the other side of it's just like open valley, and there's a little bitty river that kind of comes from the same source, goes the opposite direction. But anyway, we're sort of up in the middle of the pass here, right up near the very top of the mountain range, and right up near one of the lower peaks, right near the top of the pass, there's this huge boulder. And about the size of a minivan, or actually a maxi van, a stretch van is about the size of it, 7 foot tall at least. And on top of it, there's a smaller sort of round or kind of like hamburger shaped, no, it's more like round, boulder about 5 feet across. And it's like propped up with little rocks under one side of it. And as Khat was telling us, a rock stack will tell you how many Bigfoot there are in a troop. If they got like 4 rocks in the stack, there's probably 4 Bigfoot. And if you find multiple of these rock stacks around an area, you're probably looking at, the same troop, and they're marking out, hey, there's 4 of us here, and that sort of thing. And now here we go, and I'm finding not a rock stack, but a boulder stack. And there's only one boulder on top of it. And there's, by the way, no road going to this. It's on top of not the actual top peak, but one of the lower peaks that's near it. And so it's its own peak. So erosion couldn't account for this happening. Water couldn't wash it downhill and get it to land there because there is no downhill. It's at the top of the hill. And the one boulder sitting on top of the other one, as you can see in the picture. Plus it's got little boulders propping, little, fist-sized rocks under one side of it, sort of propping it up. So this is kind of a really weird thing. And as we were talking off air about this, I sort of got the feeling that I had guessed right and that there's probably what Khat calls one of the stick Indians living up there, and that was his little boulder stack marking it like, hey, I'm here. There's one of me. And yeah. God, as if we need any more of them. So, But, that was really scary. And I camped like, geez, maybe, a couple 100 yards from there before I noticed it the next morning. does not make me feel very safe or comfortable. So for those guys that want to look at this in an entirely new light, go back and look at the Skalkaho field research videos that I did, and you'll get to see this at the end one. But anyway, so I think that pretty much covers it for the trolls, anything that we wanted to talk about. Was there anything else about the tree and stick structures that we didn't get around to that you wanted to talk about?
Well, let's look here. I told you guys about the rock stacks and what they mean. Also, you're going to notice, I told you to go back down and look at the river, because you're going to see, in conjunction with those rock stacks, you're going to see markers down by the river for him as well. And that's him telling everybody else, this is where I come to drink and stay out of it, you know, which is,
now,
to me,
what would a marker like that look like where he comes down to the river? What would you be looking for?
You're going to end up having the rocks, but they're going to be, instead of being river rocks, he's going to actually bring in something else, which are flat pieces of like shale, you know, or you're in Montana, so it might even be pitcher rock. He might bring that down and use that. They're just, people have asked me when they see them, they always assume that they're like from Asian people, you know, from the railroad times, because they say they look like little houses, Khat. What does that mean? That's his. That means leave it alone. That's his, you know, and it looks, they take 2 flat rocks and stand them up, you know, and like you're making a house out of cards, you know. So it's like that.
So it's like the peak of a steep roof sort of thing.
Yeah. You know, like you're making a house of cards, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to make those. And depending on how many times he's had people encroach on his territory, especially humans, he's going to really, if they're up there bugging him and peeing in places that they shouldn't be peeing, you know, gutting elk, gutting deer, whatever, up in his area. If they're hunting in his territory, you're going to notice that these little rock stacks and the little houses are more predominant. I mean, they're seriously there. You're going to be like turning around and see one and then turn around and see another one. You know, the more upset he's getting, the more he's going to put.
Okay. So, that's very good information to people to have. If they find one lone one, maybe no big worry, but if you start finding a pile of them, there's whoever owns that land is not happy with humans, and maybe you shouldn't be there, especially considering who it's likely to be.
See, I have a girlfriend who lives on the top of a mountain in Arkansas, and when she moved up there, you know, she said, Khat, I think they're up here, you know, and I said, well, they probably are, because it's Arkansas, you know, they're up there. And I said, you need to, you know, be your normal self and don't worry about it. Well, she sent me a picture after she had moved in, and they actually, the big guy actually took and made a footprint, you know, a fake footprint out of rocks. He made a huge rock, you know, for the sole, and then 5 smaller rocks around it, you know. And what was so interesting was that the pinky toe on it was off. It was separated from the foot and sitting up above it, you know. And so what I ended up telling her, I said, well, that's interesting. I said, apparently he's letting you know how big he is, you know, and that he is not a lone, I mean, he's not a stayama, you know, of the normal type. I said, so you need to watch yourself. And she did, you know, and she ended up having interactions with him where he would come down to the barn, you know, and go in there. And the thing that was funny was he would sit on the hay that she had stacked up in there, and he would leave a perfect butt print and half an apple every time. He was like, I was here, this is what I did.
You're going to love the show that I recorded with Taylor, because he talks about Scooter leaving one of those on the ground. On one of those rare occasions where he wasn't squatting and he actually sat his butt on the ground. He left this giant ass print in it. Man, that's how you can tell how heavy they are, when they leave a giant butt print in the ground. You know, the hay is squished flat, and you've got this perfect butt cheek. You know, and I can sit in one and she can sit in the other one, and we're looking at each other going, oh, this is a really big guy. Yeah, really, really, really big. Speaking of really big and gigantic, you know, at this point, before we move off the topic of the stick Indians, it would behoove us to mention that You were actually with your troop when one of those showed up at one point. And you want to talk about that one?
Well, I just need people to understand that everybody seems to think that Steyama can kick everybody's ass. I'm serious here. They're like, oh, just pit it against a dog man, or just pit it against a stick Indian. Whatever, just do this. And no, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. For them, they have things that they are fearful of, and you and I were talking about this as when we were talking. They've learned to associate humans with a lot of bad stuff. Yeah. So they know.
We're the worst of all possible combinations. We're screwy and dangerous.
Yeah, and guess what? We carry diseases, so we need to be kept at arm's length. I mean, seriously.
If you get near us, you might catch a plague, and then all the stay on the die all of a sudden. Not like that's happened or anything.
No, but that's what you and I were talking about, and I want people to understand that when you put normal size Steyama against stick Indian or a Gugli or troll, whatever you want to call them, they're intimidated. They're gonna back down. They're gonna just leave. They're gonna state their piece. Which is usually, don't mess with me, and I won't mess with you. But at the same time, they're doing this. They're backing away. They want to wait. They don't want to deal with it because I've never seen one of the stick Indians attack a normal Steyama. But I have a feeling just from seeing them that they could rip their head off, no problem. No problem. Pinch it off, and that's it.
Well, God, they're so much bigger. I mean, you just think about it. Sure, the regular, an alpha male, 9 or 10 foot tall, 1,500 pounds, gigantic, massive, built like the Hulk. But we're talking about a critter that's 15 or 20 feet tall and built like Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, that's like going up against a 3 foot tall muscle kid. He could boot him like a football.
Yeah, play punt, and literally my females were screaming. They do scream, and they were terrified. They needed a way, they wanted a way. They didn't want to deal with this thing. And this is what really shook me up, was the fact that they got so intimidated by this thing and shook up over this thing that their home space that they used, their nesting space, was like tense for a week afterwards. It was like, you could just tell that if you stepped wrong, if you said something wrong, you're going to have hackles raised and you're going to get pushed, slammed, whatever. I mean, they were really on alert. And that's when I realized these guys are something formidable. They may look tall like Shaquille O'Neal and real, they're a very lean muscle. I mean, just, what I'm talking about.
Scale it up. You're talking about like cubing the weight every so often and stuff too. This isn't like a linear 1 + 1 = 2 equation when you're dealing with making things taller and bigger. So if you got like a 9 foot tall Steyama that's weighing 1,500 pounds, and you got an 18 foot tall stick Indian, he probably weighs 3 tons.
Yeah, and that is true, because when they walk, I've seen them. When they put their foot down, they have the same type of feet, same general shape as the Steyama with that pad, and when that comes down, they are heavy enough that they actually will crack, because they will crack the rock that is there, that's in their way that they're walking on. So picture that. I've seen
heavy equipment do that too, so I can picture it.
Yeah, it just crushes underneath them, and people are real loath to believe that something like that can exist. Well, just stop and think about it, okay? There are so many, many legends worldwide about these guys. They're not going to be made up from every single culture. They're just not.
Well, and here's the other thing, too, that I get the scientific argument against this one thrown in my face every so often that, well, really a skeleton of a creature built like that big, couldn't support it. Okay, and that's complete hogwash. First of all, they like to say, well, the animals used to be bigger. There was 120-foot sauropods back in the days of the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous, because we had a different oxygen content in the atmosphere then, so animals could get a lot bigger. Okay, let's say that that's true. How do you account for Baluchitherium? How do you account for some of the other Ice Age animals, like, a beaver the size of a Volkswagen? How do you account for a 3 to 5 ton ground sloth that's 15 feet tall and walks on its hind legs? Okay, that's the same size and weight we're talking about. In fact, the ground sloth, although shorter, is more heavily built. Right. And that was real, and we've got skeletons of it. So don't tell me that it's physically impossible for these things to exist, because you need to go get some basic biology and physics courses in, and then come back and tell me that you were dead wrong.
Exactly. Not just that. You can go and research on your own and find out that there have been cases right up until today where they are unearthing skeletons that are that big, and bigger. And it's like, please, when they start dating them, it's scary. It really is. It's really scary to realize that these things existed and still do exist in our time frame.
And thankfully in seemingly highly limited numbers, owing primarily to the fact that they live a really long time. So there doesn't need to be very many of them, thank God. And if what we were talking about in the last episode is true, so there isn't going to be likely being any overpopulation of them at any point, because there aren't females of this species, hopefully, for them to breed with and,
I've never even heard
these things.
Yeah, I've never even heard of a female, existing. I just haven't, and all
I never have either, and really, believe me, I've been looking into this for quite a few years now, and every time it's anything about trolls or really big ogres or the Arctic giants or anything that you might think could potentially be a mountain giant, it's always a male. The only exceptions to that is the ogress of the Arctic, which, if you look at that legend, oh my God, it really comes across being like they're talking about kind of the same creature as Baba Yaga, just take the dancing hut away, and there's the ogress that eats people. And again, this is like Finland, northern Russia, where that legend comes from, and then you have the Inuits, who of course cover all that area, but they have the same sort of legend over on the other side of the globe. So again, that's kind of weird.
Right, And I agree with that. I have never, like I said, I don't know any legends of a big female that's in Native Americans. I don't. I do know of the stone giants that we had in our legends, that were up in the hills, and you didn't really want to mess with them. They kept retreating further and further back, and that's like what I was telling you with my group. They've been pushed back and pushed back, with things being sold around them, the BLM land being sold and stuff, that it's gotten to the point where they made that horrendous skull tree. These guys will do everything they can to intimidate you before they attack you. They will put it up however they can so that you will leave them alone, and what I tell everybody is the only time you're going to have an interaction is if they want to have an interaction. You cannot force them to interact with you. You cannot.
That brings me to another structure that I kind of wondered about, and this is another interesting thing we found up in the Schuylkill on the Stick Indian side of the river. It's the only other structure that we saw over there. There's actually one piece of land on the side of that river that's got a barbed wire fence on it, a really new, really expensive one, 3-strand. And we got that on film, too. And just back from the fence, maybe 20, 25 feet, there's this huge tree about 35, 40 feet long that's been carefully crunched through and woven between all these other trees, making like another fence at about the same height as the top of that fence, only obviously not created by humans. And, oh my God, what moved that whole tree and put it there? But it's almost like that land was not, it didn't say no trespassing. There wasn't a no trespassing sign there, if I recall, that we saw. We just assumed automatically it's somebody's land because they got barbed wire up, don't cross it. We don't know who owned that land, and there is no road access to it. But here, right on the other side of it, is this weird, like a tree making another fence, like 25 feet right behind it, as if to like reinforce the whole thing. And that really made us stop for a minute and go, I've seen some little cross pieces placed between trees before, but I've never seen an entire 35, 40-foot tree crammed in between like 12 trees before. And it's not even the same kind. All these trees in this stand are all identical, and this is a completely different tree from somewhere else. There's no stump there or anything.
Right. You see, and that's him telling the person who put the barbed wire fence up, this was my land. You put your fence up. No, I'm going to put my fence. And this brings me to a topic that I really have been studying for quite a while, and when I figured it out, I let a bunch of people know that in my group that exactly what it was. I had people sending me stick structures that were pictures of stick structures that were like the small paned windows, with 6 and 8 or 9 little paned windows in it.
Right.
And they were sending me these, and they said, "What are these?" Well, I sat there and looked at them, and I had my own thought as to what it was, but when I broached it with Kiasa, what it ended up being is they're letting humans know that humans look out windows and see them. So they make windows and prop them up so that humans know that they see humans. So if you come out in their area and you come across one of these things, it looks just like a woven window, with the small panes in it. They're letting you know that they're watching you. They're watching you and what you're doing on their land. So
or do you think maybe it's just like a big send-up that they're like huge fans of human TV, so they're like making the human TV logo? Hey, I watch the Johnson Family Dinner every night. It's my favorite show. We're big fans of windows. Please keep the drapes open.
Well, you'll notice that most people, too, that have interactions with them say that about them. They're like the biggest peeping Toms. They really are. I don't even have curtains in my back. I gave up. I can't even open the windows.
Well, what the hell for? You know that they're there anyway, and you know them, so.
Exactly. So what the heck, And it got old in the summertime when I'd have the window open and the curtains there, and I got sick to death of jump scares. Okay, I'm sitting there and I'm reading a book or something, and here comes the hand thrust through the freaking curtain at me. It's, I'm screaming, and then I'm like, so
that's endless hilarity for them. So of course they're encouraged to do it again.
Oh yes, they love the way that I scream with this voice. They're like, "Oh my God!"
Hey, let's go make Cat scream. Yeah, the Johnson Family Dinner show isn't on for another hour. Let's go make Cat scream.
That's it, Well, here, okay, I'll make everybody laugh. Okay, they compared my scream to the sound of a rabbit when it's caught and snared.
Well, no wonder they think it's so entertaining.
Yeah, they think that's funny, and then to find out, to associate Kitty, with me, and they know what cats are, and they're like, ha, ha, ha. And Scunny, who is my nemesis, has this big deal of associating my name with cats, and he loves to let me know that he eats cats. So, I know.
Trying to pick it on you, yeah. Yeah. So here's another one that I was wondering about, and Rich has come across a few of these, and they're star structures. And most of the ones he's run into have been horizontal. They've been crammed in between trees to form like horizontal X's with extra spokes on them. Yeah,
and I'm going to tell everybody what those are, and I hope you have a decent picture of what I'm going to relate, because
yes, I do. I got several, so we'll show them.
Okay. This blew my mind. Okay, I puzzled over this for 20 years. Okay. And I could not get them to give me an answer on it. I said, "What are you making? What is this?" It looks like when you find one, you walk into the forest, and it looks like all these trees are just thrown willy-nilly and stacked on top of each other and woven in and out of each other. Okay? And sometimes, a lot of times, you find them where there's only 5 or 6 of them, and they're huge. Okay, and they're going horizontally. You're trying to figure this out. I finally got it. It took me 20 years to figure it out because it kept increasing. The logs that I was finding, the trees that I was finding, were being more and more and more into this pattern. And I was laying there with Kiasa, talking to him, and I always lay down. I'm lazy. When they wear me out. I can't follow them around, so I'll just plop down and lay down. And I was laying there, and I was looking up at the sky, and I saw a jet going overhead. And I just stopped and I started counting the trails. And then I kind of looked over at him and I pointed up and I said, Sky, you? And he finally gave me that nasty little look of, you're such a dumbass, you finally got it, huh? And I said, Sky, you. And he said, Sky, me. Sky, us. So what they are doing when they are replicating that, they are replicating what do you call them? Chemtrails, contrails, whatever you call them. The white ones. And no matter, living in Phoenix, and in Nevada, where we had 5 and 6 airports up there for private people coming in and out all the time, it really started to bring it all together for me. So I actually started photographing the sky. I would photograph the sky, and then I would go see them, usually that day. If not that day, then that night. And I started noticing that on the days that there were more and more of these chemtrails up there, they were mimicking them. They were making a reflection. And I was like, what does this mean? And they don't have a meaning for it, but what they, were letting me know is that they are definitely watching the sky. They're watching the sky and watching the things that go across the sky that leave these big trails.
Huh.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Very interesting. They're looking for signs in the sky. That sounds familiar somehow.
Yeah, kind of. They do the most unique things, things that people don't understand. But here's one. Growing up with my grandmother, I knew that cobwebs, were used in her lifetime for chest colds. They would wad them up. They would go find a cobweb, wad it into a ball, and have the person swallow it. And that was supposed to be to clean out the chest. Well, these guys do the exact same thing. It's like I said before, with like the skunk cabbage there in Oregon. You can't eat that. There's no way you can eat that. But they do, because they sit there and they break the fibers down. They've got a crystalline structure in the main parts of the stem. So they take the stones and they literally are pounding it, mashing it, breaking it down so that those sharp forms that are in there, they can actually swallow it and digest it. So they do things that seem weird, but they're really not if you realize what they're doing, and why they're doing it, and that's where telling people it's not an ape. You need to understand it's a culture.
Yeah, no kidding, it's not an ape. So speaking of not an ape, they have a language. Shall we get to the moment that everybody's been waiting for? Bigfoot Language 101. Get your notepads. Get ready to write this down. Get ready to listen. Get ready to absorb this. Because we now have the teacher on board, and she's going to tell us how to speak some basic Bigfoot phrases. And we're going to try and focus on things that are useful. So, let me throw this out to you. I'm walking down a little trail out in the woods all by myself, and as I'm walking along, I get this weird feeling something's watching me. Everything gets silent, and all of a sudden, next to this huge tree in front of me, this 9-foot male steps out and glares at me. What do I say to him in Bigfoot language to avoid being used as a baseball bat and beaten against a tree?
You say nahalio. Nahalio means hello.
Okay.
I'm gonna write out the list for you, so you've got it for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you guys are listening to this, it's up on the screen. I'm gonna have subtitles of all of this. So any word that she goes through, you can have the written version you can look at. You can hear her pronounce it, and then hopefully it'll be close enough that when you run into a Bigfoot, you can say the right words and not get used as a baseball bat and beaten against a tree. So okay.
I'm gonna spell them phonetically too. Okay, because you guys got to understand, these guys do not have a written language. They have a spoken and a sign language, okay? So
this is all alliteration on our part. It's like if we're meeting a new Stone Age culture and they say hooga booga, we decide how it's spelled.
Right, exactly. So I've spelled it, as best as I can to the way that they say it, and they think that's hysterical. They think it's funny that I make marks on the paper. They're just like, why don't you just say it?
Because this way I can pass it along silently to someone else who can say it later at some other point without me even being there.
That's the point. Well, they don't even get that because they're like, how do we know we want to talk to the next person? They're so crazy. They're just obnoxious at times. I'm serious because I've given them things to draw with, and they just look at me, okay, you want a house? Here's a house. This is what a house looks like. And they're like, why do we need that?
Yeah.
They think
I can understand. There's lots of things they wouldn't bother to have a word for. It's just not useful with what they're dealing with most of the time. So when you say this thing to Bigfoot, what are you telling him?
You're telling him hello, okay? And then right
so it's just hello.
Yeah, right after Nahalio, you're going to immediately say Napisu, which means no harm. That means you don't want to harm them, and they don't want to harm you. It means basically...
Hopefully. Yeah. I'm not a threat. Please don't kill me. Okay, so that's one word. See, this makes it easy because their language is simple. So you don't have to have long, complicated sentences to get the idea across. No. Please don't use me as a baseball bat and beat me against a tree. You can say this with one word, no harm.
And remember, I just said they have sign language. So you can hold your hand up like, stop, I'm not going to hurt you. Or you can hold your hand out, as in a gesture of, look, I have nothing in my hand, and I'm completely safe here. Don't hurt me, And I'm not.
Do they get that one, that universal greeting that all the North American Native tribes did, where they would hold their hand up open, palm out, to show that they didn't have a weapon, they weren't dangerous?
Yep, they sure do. And you know why they have that. They have that knowledge because they traded with those Indians. All the tribes had. All the tribes, like I said, had somebody in their tribe who traded with this branch of people, and that's what they were considered. They were considered a people. So they have their own language, okay? If you come across them by the water, Kolun is water, and I just spell it like I say it. So, and I'm pretty good at pronouncing what they say because I've been doing it since I was 5 years old. Okay.
You had some considerable time to think about how to spell this stuff.
Yeah. Here's one that I think a lot of people need. Okay. Yabicho. Yabicho is meat. Okay. So if you want to take them a gift, you can say that. You can say yabicho. You can say Nahalio yabicho, and they're going to instantly associate what you're holding out or what you've put out for them, that it's a gift, and I'm saying this because I know a lot of people like to gift them, but just be prepared. This is what I tell everybody. If you gift these beings, you're going to have the most ginormous 8-year-old follow you home, okay? Yeah. And I'm serious here. They will follow wherever there is food because food is on their mind 24/7. Okay, they can't catch enough food. They can't scrounge up enough food. I am serious. Even though it is enough to make them and feed them, they are literally walking eating machines. Okay. It's nothing.
Probably don't want to take a step unless it's leading them closer where there's food to eat, then, basically.
Exactly. I'm serious here. I used to give them a 50-gallon drum, okay? I had a 50-gallon drum full of sweet mix, for the horse with the corn and everything in it, molasses. And it's nothing for them to come grab that and walk off with it, and then they're back the next day going, I need more of this. So
what'd you do with the last one? Well, we ate all of it. Well, how'd you eat all that in one day?
It's gone. It's just gone. And if you ever take that up there and you do get to sit and eat with them, you will notice that they're not very nice eaters. Okay, everything goes into the mouth. I mean, everything. When they gave me the mice to eat, they sat there looking at me like, because I was trying to pull the fur off of it. I was going to be dignified and not eat the fur, okay? And they're like looking at me like, what's wrong with you? Just eat it, like you would a kid that's sitting there picking. Finally, I just, do the swallow, stuff it in the mouth and swallow, It's like, because that's the way they are. Everything goes in the mouth, okay? Also, you're going to ask them, when you find the one. If one comes out, where there's one, there's usually more, unless it's a lone male. Okay, so mana epi means many of you. Okay, it means it's as close as you're going to get to how many. Okay, mana epi. Okay, so that's one that they're going to need to know. Here's a good one. Papute noma is danger. There's an animal, and they associate danger animal to danger human. Okay, we are just another animal to them.
Oh, yeah, we're the top of the list, dangerous animals, actually.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting because when they were explaining that to me, I was like, wait a minute, why don't you have there are a danger word for there are dangerous people, and they don't consider us people. That's sad, but that's the truth. To them, we're an animal because we act like an animal, and a lot of people hate hearing that, but that's the truth. I related the story of Navi, where he had seen the guy kill the other guy up in the forest, and he was like, to him, that was horrific because that's the most taboo thing that you can do is kill a clan member, so he was absolutely horrified.
And before anybody gets bent out of shape about the Stama being big snobs, if you go back and look at the history of like some of the Native American tribes, and they even documented this in was a Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, where he's hanging out with this one Indian tribe, and their name literally translates to human beings. So their tribe were human beings, everybody else were some other thing, not human beings. And this is sort of Bigfoot saying the same thing. We're the human beings. We don't know what the hell you are, but you're some kind of dangerous critters.
You're little, but you're dangerous. You pack a wallop.
If we're looking at a puckwudgie, they're little and dangerous too. So I can understand it. Apparently, they're afraid of them too, from what I hear. Yeah,
I agree. So, if you want to get away from him and you feel like you're being intimidated or you're intimidating him, I always tell people, don't run right off the bat. Okay, these guys will catch you in a heartbeat. They don't even have to take a deep breath and they've caught you, okay? Yeah. Just hold your hand out like you're like a supplication, like you're putting your palm up, hand out like telling someone to hand you something, your hands out. Okay, put it that way and say, Woyo Hakili. Woyo Hakili means to travel away or go, to them. Their words have many meanings because there's so few of them. And their way of telling you to go away would be Woyo Hakili, or you tell them, I'm going away, and start backing up.
Yeah, like point the opposite direction and say Woyo Hakili.
Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I'm not going to bug you. I'm not going to harass you, because once you start saying things like that to them, they're going to get it, and they're going to leave you alone. And
by the way, I got a friend over here. Just sorry to bust in here all the time. I got a friend over here in Idaho who was horseback riding, came around a big boulder and ran into probably a beta male who was like taking a whiz and didn't notice her and the horse coming around the boulder. And he turned around, saw her, and she saw him, and she pointed at herself and pointed back and pointed at him and pointed the opposite direction. And he just turned around and walked that direction, and she turned the horse around and went the opposite way. So there's communication without any conversation. They both figured out right away, uh-oh, this is bad. Okay, I'll go back this way, you go that way. Okay.
Yep, I want away from you as fast as possible, and people, they really do. They will go away, rather than have an interaction with you. I tell people that all the time. The only time they're going to have an interaction with you is if they want to. If they don't want to, it's done. Believe me, they can make you leave really quick. The
other thing that made me wonder what was going on there is because it was sort of on a trail that there wasn't much options. You had to sort of go around this real steep edge on this hill where this boulder was sort of sticking out, and he was on the other side of it. And I asked her, did the horse have horseshoes? And she said no.
Yeah.
And that made me wonder if he thought he was hearing an elk or something walking around this trail and wasn't that concerned and was just going to grab it when it came by, finish taking a whiz until it got there, and then turned around and went, oh, crap, human on horse. Wasn't expecting that, you know.
That could very well have been, you know. I tell people a lot, too, that if they want to see Steyama, they have a better chance of doing it on a horse because they're non-threatening to them. You know, they're just another big animal, and they're not considered a food source. You know, they're not like cows, you know. I mean, yeah, so ripping the head off of a bull, that was kind of annoying. You know, I had to pay for that. But they get that horses are something else. You know.
Well, yeah, and look at, you know, Patterson-Gimlin film. Well, how'd they get that? They were on horseback.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
you know, I'm sure Patty probably heard him coming a ways away and went, hey, large four-footed animal, I can hear it coming, it's probably an elk, and just weren't that worried about it.
Yep, was not worried at all, you know. So, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I need people to know that if you come across a female by herself, you need to say Nabicho. Nabicho, and say it in a questioning kind of voice, you know, Nabicho, because that lets her know that you know that there are males. You're asking her straight out, are there males here? You know, and if she's coming for you and there's no males, you need to leave. And I mean, leave.
This is a female ogress thing we were talking about earlier. If she's around, there's no males around. There's something seriously wrong because there's always males with females.
Exactly. You know, and I'm not going to say it's not possible because there are those odd times when you hear about guys being picked up by a female Bigfoot and trapped, you know, for a while. I mean, I seriously believe that because I've watched them do it with my animals. You know, if they wanted something like a baby goat to take care of, Lemmy was big on that one. You know, she took the goat, and this is where you and I were talking about pets. You know, she took the goat, and I was like, can I have a goat back? You know, please. You know,
which one's my goat?
Yeah, it's my kidney goat. You know,
well, this must have been kind of bizarre for you because you're usually associating them with being eating machines and everything they grab goes in their mouth, and all of a sudden she's got this thing, she's keeping it as a pet, and they're going, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I fully expected to walk down the hill and come back the next day and find bones. You know, I really did. And she did it, and it was like the strangest thing. She would just love it and take care of it, and, you know, and I was like, this is really creeping me out here because I thought for sure she was going to eat it. And then she kept it for almost a month, and then one day it was on my back patio. She was just done with it. And I was like, okay.
She brought it back, so a temporary pet, okay.
Yeah, temporary. I guess she thought it was cute because she was stroking, you know, and I mean, it's pretty intense to see a female Steyama pick up a goat and carry it around like it's a chihuahua, okay?
Yeah, actually, that was the mental image I was getting. And what's even more strange is that she treated, you know, she acted like an unhappy customer at Petco. I'm returning your poodle. It does not suit my needs. I've tried it out for a month, and I think I don't want it.
Yeah, and, you know, he came back to me. He didn't smell pretty. You know, he wasn't groomed, and he was dirty and muddy, and I was like, you suck. You know, I have to take care of him.
Well, at least he was alive. You know, you can't really complain about that.
You know, and she did feed him, but, I mean, he didn't eat enough, you know, so I'm not sure what her, you know, if she was just curious or I don't know, you know, and with the pets, like I was telling you, I've seen them make the little fish traps, you know, and feed the minnows. They feed the minnows. I've seen them with raccoons, you know, in their group. They eat them, but at the same time, they also keep them for pets. So I don't know if it's you know, keeping food stock on hand or whatnot, because they pet them, you know, which is really funny if you've ever seen raccoons. I kept 4 of them as pets, okay, when I was a kid. And these things, the boars are the worst. You know, they make this horrible little screeching sound when they're mad. And these are wild raccoons, okay? So these guys, these huge people are keeping these things around them, and they reach over and grab it like a cat, up by its neck and sit there and pet it, and it's like making horrible noises.
The raccoon's like really glad it's not going into the mouth and it's getting petted.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, I've literally watched them give them heart attacks and kill them from doing this, okay? They're like, oh my God, but I don't know if they're mimicking us, if they're trying to keep pets. I don't know. I really just don't get it. So
it's so weird. So one thing that we can be fairly sure of is that they do not keep dogs or cats as pets. If your dogs and cats are disappearing, something else is happening to them.
Yeah, you guys really need to be aware of that. My daughter, her cats were eaten a couple different times, so now she only has inside cats. The dogs, as I've demonstrated in my videos, they like to stuff them through knot holes in the trees. And I say that with a chuckle because if I don't laugh about it, I will cry about it, okay? And it's the first time I ever saw them do it, I was just floored. I mean, I literally fell down to my knees because I was walking and here was my Great Dane stuffed through a knot hole, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't even fathom how I was going to get him out, and after this time, when I went to help another person who was having some problems with a male Sayama, when I got there, he had taken an elk's head and stuffed it through a tree to make his point. So stuffing heads through knot holes is like a big thing for them. It's a way of letting people know that they're really ticked off, and other things are really annoyed by the dogs. So they'll do that with them,
Well, and before we go any further, as we're speaking on the subject of like animals and food and whatnot here again, the all-important warning comes up that if you're going to be interacting with these things, it's better to not give them any food. First of all, they shouldn't be eating any processed food. Secondly, like anything humans have had contact with is suspect. If you cough or sneeze on it, they might get what you have. So they're probably not prone to want to eat it anyway. And the third thing is if they do accept the food and eat it, well, how are you sure they're not taking this as like tribute, going, okay, well, now feed me all the time? And now you've got a constant problem because this giant eating machine that you can't communicate very well with or really trust all that much now wants you to feed it all the time. So don't feed them in the first place.
Please don't, because, and that sounds so hypocritical on my part, but my way of looking at these guys is I am my brother's keeper, okay? These guys came to me and have been with me all this time and have pulled my butt out of the fire a couple different times when I've been in the forest, so I don't pay tribute, but I do donate to my family because they are an extended family.
Well, and with you can make the difference clear because you can actually talk and communicate with them and they can't get the wrong idea. And the other thing is that they know that you basically got an agreement with your neighbors that as long as the hairy, scary stay around your place and don't go down to Farmer Johnson's house and rip the head off a cow, they probably won't get messed with.
Exactly. Don't get me wrong. There was a point in time where these guys about bankrupted me, okay, with food and paying off ranchers, and it just was so overwhelming. I seriously was in like the deepest, darkest pit of hell trying to figure out how to deal with these guys. And when I had explained to them, what you're doing is wrong, it's bad, stop it. Then they turned around and started killing bighorn sheep, and they were killing cougars. And that's really intimidating to find a cougar just laid out with its skull busted and its meat ripped clear down to the spine. It's like, here, this is what we did for you this week. It's like, so I need people to be aware that when they do show signs of this intimidation, and anger on their part, people need to be aware of what they're doing. If you see stuff like this, please stop. Seriously, if you come home and you find your dogs or your pet cats or turtles or whatever, here, that turtle, I'm saying turtle for a reason here, okay? If you find them massacred, then you really are not having a good relationship with these guys at that point in time. Okay? And the turtle was actually a tortoise, I guess, and they squished it. They stepped on it and proceeded to pull it out of the shell and left it there. Now, was it for the person to eat? No. They were letting them know that they were really ticked off because this person had made a garden for them. And when I told them, I said, well, you're actually inviting them in to come in and be in your area. So to them, they think that your garden for you is theirs too, and you need to stop. Well, when they finally did stop, which was 2 years past the point where I had told them, it had gotten to the point where these guys were used to being fed and coming in and taking whatever they wanted. So it ended up being the tortoise was mangled. Their dogs were killed. I'm trying to think everything here. They had sheep, and there were 6 sheep that they were just using for wool, and those guys were killed and not eaten. They just went in and they were furious, and that was why I was called in, because it was 2 years past the fact, and they said, well, what's going on? Why are they so angry? What's upsetting them? I said, the fact that you let them have the gardens for 2 years, and then you took it away from them. These guys think that if you give them something, you're going to keep giving it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to really, really think about that, because I tell people all the time, if you want to go give them something, make sure you do it out in the woods, away from your home, and don't make it a habit. Just take something out there and, tell them, hey, I'm giving you this, no strings attached. I mean, I want nothing from you, nothing. And people need to understand that, because if you will do this, then you will have, a really good relationship with these guys. I really want to stress that fact, because I get scared hearing all these people out there trying to have interactions with them, and then they go wrong.
Because they don't know what they're doing. This is you don't play with fire. You don't give a caveman an A-bomb and a hammer. You need you need to have a little bit of knowledge of what it is that you're dealing with before you start dealing with it, not after the fact. Oh my God, I screwed up. I've got a whole troop of Bigfoot that are beating on my house every night. I don't know what I did wrong. What have you been doing? Well, I left the deer hanging out on the porch, and that was gone. And then my freezer out there on the outside that I don't lock got raided a bunch of times. And it's like, well, you're leaving tons of food outside for them. What are they supposed to think?
Exactly. What are you doing? Seriously, these are the people that I wonder if they have like that thrill gene in them, because you thrill to this, because this is dangerous, and then once it really starts getting down to it, to where they're pulling the roof off your trailer, to come in, then
we have time to stop the whole thing. Exactly. So did we miss any words now? Were there any other phrases or anything that you had ready for us?
I got some more. I've got more here. This one is such a weird one, too. Totsiwu Uchenko means that there's other humans nearby, okay?
Wow.
And there's something you could say to them, too. I mean, if you're feeling threatened, you can let them know that there's more of us, if they need to. Mabichi means, I listen. I'm hearing you. I hear what you say. And that's a really important thing to them, because they do not speak. They don't sit here and just chatter like us humans, okay? They just don't. They're very quiet in and amongst themselves, okay? They do hand sign, in and amongst themselves when they want. So that's how their conversations pretty much are. I want to say it's 60% hand sign and 40% language. Sound. So just if you come to one and he's roaring or he's doing something, showing a sign of aggression, tell him Mabichi. Tell him Mabichi. Because that means I'm listening to you and I'm not, say it calmly. I know it's hard. You're just coming from me. I've peed my pants 3 or 4 times now in my lifetime with them.
Yeah, and my previous guest was talking about that happening too, so there you go.
Yeah.
It's not hard for that to happen.
No, it's a natural thing, it really is. And I know people are like, oh, I would never do that. I got news for you. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. Maptiais means chase. Please don't chase. Don't chase me. Maptiais. Don't chase me. I don't want to be chased. Okay? So I get the message and I'm leaving, okay? Papuachachi is I share food. So if you take food up there, you can say that. You can say Papuachachi. And that means I'm leaving you food. I'm sharing it. Also, too, you can say Chukali. Chukali means I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy I found you. I'm happy I saw you. Or I'm happy that you left me a gift, or whatever type of relationship that you're having with them. Yoyu Ubechi is females. Okay, and I always found this one really interesting to me because Yoyu Ubechi, the Yoi to me sounds, the way that they pronounce it is almost like you Ubechi. And I always thought, why are you saying you? Is it because I'm the female, or are you saying that general for females? They don't differentiate between it. Here's one too that I know some of your listeners will be familiar. Need this word, and it's nopiest. Nopiest are birds. Okay, if you're finding birds like ravens, hawks, trying to think, starlings, these birds that we call T-Rex birds. I don't know how to explain what they are. They attack and they have this really sharp beak, and they can actually kill cats. Nopiest. These guys, the Stegama, hold birds very highly. It's real high esteem for them, and they consider anything with wings to be associated with Heavenly Father, with God. So to them, it's very, very important that if they use them, then you will find that when they're done using them, you'll find a hawk or a starling, like I said, or a crow or a raven laying in the path, and its breast is usually cracked or torn. Mm-hmm. And the head will be missing, and that's them putting it down. It's their kind way of putting it down and making an offering to you as well. I'm trying to think. I have a person that I contact in the Bigfoot world, and she was telling me I kept getting these dead birds on my porch, and I said, "Well, they're giving them to you." And she says, "How do you know they're giving them to me? Why are they giving them to me?" I said, "Well, it's probably because you said that you had canaries, and they were there listening to the canaries, right outside her window. They would listen to them, and they realized that they brought her joy. And then her canaries died. So they started bringing her birds that were dead, and every day they would place them on the chair by her front door. And she at first thought it was her cat, but then she realized that this wasn't a cat kill, it wasn't that. And her cat had never killed birds. So then she started realizing that it was them bringing it. And I said, what they're letting you know is that with the eyes, they're leaving the head on. So with the eyes, they're letting you know that they see you and you're mourning your bird. They understand that you're mourning your birds are gone. So they're bringing you other birds, to show you that they understand. And once she understood that, then she was like, oh, okay, I get it. And so she would go out into the back in her chair and sit and talk to them. And I said, that's exactly what you need to do. Just sit there and talk at the forest and tell them. People don't understand that these guys have been around longer than human beings, okay? So they have grown accustomed to our languages. People think they're dumb, okay? They're not dumb. I usually tell people that if you will pick out the indigenous Native American tribe that was in your area or is still in your area, I will bet you $100 that you can speak words of that native language to them, and you will get an answer. Okay? You will get an answer.
So now the words in their language that you're telling us, these don't have, like, there's no direct corollary in any of the native languages, like some of the words they're using are the same as a word in Crow, or some of the, same as in Sioux, or...
Nope. And this is the part that with my research, where I think that what they are speaking is pre-Adamic. Because
and I think Dave would agree with you on that one, because he thinks that they're speaking the proto-language that we used to speak, and that after the whole thing with the Tower of Babel, we got all the weird languages, and they stuck with the original one.
Right. Exactly. We fell and they didn't. People need to understand that too, because when I say that I think that they're trying to get back in good graces with Heavenly Father, when I read scripture at them, what's interesting to me is I don't think they fell off the Tower of Babel like we did. I think that they kept a lot of goodness on their part, purity on their part, because they don't lie, they don't cheat. And the only time, I'm not going to say they don't kill, because they do kill. Like I said, I watched them, Kielsa do that to one of the males. But that was for something.
On the other hand, now wait, let me break in here for a second. This is an important point, and a lot of Christians don't get this. There's a difference between the word that we use and the actual word. In the Bible, the translation in English says, "Thou shalt not kill." That's not correct. The actual word is murder.
Murder,
It's okay to kill things. It is not okay to murder things or people.
No. And see, that's where I think they kept more of the purity that way, because they don't do the things that we do. I'm telling you now, stay-a-ma, do not steal. They will trade you, Oh, yes, they will bring something down and trade you. Okay, sure, you didn't sanction the trade, but that's my goat. But,
well, I had to take a couple of your chickens, so, hey, here's a bunch of yummy mice that I caught, wrapped in leaves.
Yeah.
You can eat these.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's just different things to them. They have such a pure culture to themselves, unto themselves. And it's just when you watch them, they have no concept. So them watching us as human beings, they're terrified of us. They are terrified. I mean, my kids grew up, they thought it was funny. I thought it was sad, because where I used to live in Nevada was outside city limits, going up to Mount Charleston. And Kielsa would sit out there, and we would have the big trucks come through, every day. They were hauling gravel and things like that. And he would sit on the hillside, and he would make imitations of the trucks gearing up and gearing down, And my kids thought that was hysterical. And then I didn't understand why he was. At first, I thought he was doing it, to make them laugh. And then it really started bothering me. So I finally asked him one day, I said, why do you do that? You play with the kids as it is, why do you do that? And he said, because it's big. It's bigger than me. So he was trying to relate the sounds that were coming from this enormous truck, to something into his language, so that he could let it know that he didn't want to hurt it. He didn't want to have interaction with it. He didn't want anything to do with it coming up the hill, and that's just the way they are. They think somewhat like us, but on other things, no. Guns.
I give you a good example of that from the Bigfoot Outlaws. I think Bear was mentioning this one, where there was this, the train crossings. Wherever a train crosses a road, it has to blow the horn. If there's not a stop sign there and they just keep going, they blow the horn to warn people that they're coming. So there's one area where this has been going on for, decades. And the boogers there, as he calls them boogers, of course, it's deep south, are so used to these trains coming at certain times. When they start feeling the rumbling in the ground, or they can hear it off in the distance, they start making the train whistle sound before the train even gets there.
Yep. That does not surprise me. because, that's just the type of environment. It's their culture. They try so hard to understand us, but yet they don't understand us,
Yeah.
We as alien as we think they think we are,
Yeah.
So it's
I totally agree with the humans being inscrutable and screwy, because I tend to feel that way about them most of the time, too. So. There you go. And I are one of them, and they still seem that way to me, so I don't know. I've had some of my listeners give me a hard time to watch my field research videos, and they're like, well, no wonder Bigfoot doesn't screw around with you. When you're wearing a hoodie, you look just like one. You don't have a neck. You got that pointy head. Your shoulders are too wide. They probably think you're some kind of weird dwarf Bigfoot or something, so they just leave you alone and sit there and watch you,
Exactly. They don't want to have anything to do with it.
I don't even know what that is. It looks kind of like a human, but it's kind of shaped like us, and it's got a pointy head. Let's leave it alone.
Yeah. Let's go poke it with a stick. Throw rocks.
Yeah, let's go shake its tent in the middle of the night after we steal its food.
Exactly. And I tell people that all the time. They are like us, but they're not like us. And they're just totally otherworldly. And people think when I say that I'm saying it, as in the woo-woo way. I'm not. I'm just saying that, we're humans and we're modern. We're so modernized. Okay, so take it and imagine that you're dumped onto an island full of headhunters. They're going to look at you like you're crazy man, running around there with a lighter trying to light stuff. They're like, what the heck is he doing? What is he doing? What is he, to them, we're unfathomable. And to us, you just look at them and go, wow, that's so different. I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, never could imagine that something like that actually exists and is out there. That's the real tough one for most people, because they're so conditioned from the time they're little in the conformity factory schools that they send all the kids to, that they're supposed to think a certain way, and it's the scientific way or nothing, and any of this other stuff is fairy tales, and don't look at the UFOs or the Bigfoot over there, ignore them, that doesn't exist. And then when you finally see something like that, it's like you take their rule book and you throw it out the window and go, okay, I don't believe anything that you say anymore, because you lied to me for years. You lied to me about Bigfoot. What else did you lie to me about? And you start doing research and find out, oh, you lied to me about all kinds of things. Well, I don't believe anything that you tell me. And I'm going to research all of it. As soon as you tell me it, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to go research. And, so it just turns your whole world upside down when something like this happens to you. You're lucky it happened at a young age. You grew up with it. If you're like 30, 40 years old and this happens to you, man, serious problems. The last guest that I had on, Taylor, he just went through this, from there's no such thing as Bigfoot to I'm interacting with one and I even touched it in like under 2 years. Okay. So for him, this is like way too much reality shock, and it's had terrible consequences on his life. He's been thrown in jail, directly because of Bigfoot, and probably because people wanted him to knock it off. He's had a heart attack. He's been like severely drinking for about 6 months. He's had, horrible nightmares. And so I don't recommend this. I do not tell people, go out and find Bigfoot and interact with them. No, I do not tell people to do that. Listen to these kinds of shows from people that know what they're talking about. Get all the information that you can on them. Make your own decisions, who it is that you believe. Hopefully you believe the right ones. And if you're still determined that you want to interact with these things, do it in as safe as possible way. These are not like, raccoons that you can go screw around with and get away with it. No. They're bigger, stronger, faster, more maneuverable. They know the woods inside and out. You're totally out of your element. You're totally asking for it. It doesn't matter if you have a gun. There's more of them. Don't think that you're going to win, because you won't. And if you walk into the situation thinking that you're the cocky, all-powerful human and you got control of the situation and you're in control, you're going to get yourself killed. So don't be stupid.
Don't, please, because it's terrifying to me how many people, I talk to on a daily basis who say, and usually I'm not being mean here. I'm just going to say it. They're usually in the age range of about 20 to 35, where they tell me, I'm going on a Bigfoot hunt. and I'm going to go get me one, and I'm all prepared, and I'm taking this with me, and I'm like, are you nuts? Are you nuts? Is that something that's kicked in with the testosterone? What are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
At this age, it just seems to be that particular age contacts me and wants to know, hey, can I take this to attract them? Does this work? Does this work? And I'm just like, no, I'm not even going to tell you what works, because what you're telling me is that you're going out to have a violent interaction.
Yeah.
And that's like me signing your death warrant. Yeah, sure, go do that. I condone this wholeheartedly. I don't.
I got another example for you. Let's assume that you got an incredible fire team. You got some, former military with you. You got all the right equipment. You managed to keep this under the radar. Nobody really found out about it. And you managed to actually shoot one. And you're getting ready to make off with it. And in a scenario like a person that called me a few days ago and talked to me that is not going to come on the air was telling me where they had a situation where a cargo plane, C-130, landed at the secret airstrip near where he lived. He observed it. There was a team of military guys, no discernible patches or anything on them to tell what branch of the military they're from, but they had basic camos and stuff, and of course military equipment. And they brought in something huge, about 10 feet, wrapped in a tarp on a pallet, loaded on the C-130. They also brought in 3 guys with hoods over their heads in handcuffs and loaded them on the C-130. Think about that for a minute.
Great. That's really scary. What the heck?
So before you decide to go Bigfoot hunting, Bigfoot may not be the only thing you have to worry about.
No, because you can be out there, and I'm just going to throw it out there, okay? People can say I'm a conspiracy nut job or whatever, I just don't care anymore. I don't have to care what people think of me. But my point is this. If we know they're out there, then the government knows they're out there.
Absolutely.
And you're thinking along the wrong trains there if you do not realize that there are people assigned to certain parts of each forest to record what is in that forest. That's all they do is live out there, and as far
as that goes, honestly, they can get the majority of this by satellite, because they've had satellite systems since the 1960s, and I have a picture. One of my friends has this picture framed and on his wall of a common, ordinary golf ball. A nice, clear picture. It's sitting in the grass. You can make out the whole label on it and the whole thing. This picture was taken from orbit in the late 1960s. 60s. Okay, we have had infrared satellites for a long time now. Imagine what their resolution is like. Anything that's bipedal and bigger than a human walking around the woods, you better believe they know it's there.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And people really have a mentality of not wanting to disturb their little bubbles, and not wanting to upset or rock their boat by adding these guys into the equation, but it's the truth. There are people out there that do nothing but track and take count of these types of beings, They use anything and everything for the government to log them and track them, and people need to understand that. So if you're having an interaction with one group and for whatever reason, somebody on high deems that you don't need to be having that discussion with them or that interaction with them, you could very well end up like those 3 men in the hoods, very much so. Because
and, pretty much equally as bad, the members of the troop that you're having any interaction with can end up dead. And that's the more common solution. Rather than remove the human, they'll just remove the Bigfoot so that you can't interact with them anymore. And, maybe nowadays they're actually tranking them and physically moving them somewhere else like they do with problem grizzly bears. But I have it from an inside source that like 25, 30 years ago, they just blow them away and haul the body off.
Yeah. And that relates back to my Uncle Buck. because he had a very hard time dealing with them, and he was the one who was constantly shooting at them, and letting our neighbor who lived 10 miles down the road, who was a forest ranger, letting him know that he was having issues with them, So I don't know. I have mixed feelings on this. I don't know. I don't want people to live in fear, but I also want people to be very aware that their actions have consequences.
Yeah. They have consequences for the Bigfoot you're interacting with. They have consequences for you. And the Bigfoot side of the equation is they don't like interacting with humans either. So even though you may find one or two in a troop that are willing to have something to do with you, that doesn't mean the rest of the troop likes it. And if one of the leaders of the troop all of a sudden changes, you may be getting killed the next time you go see him.
Right. And that's, what needs to be said. And you say it better than I do, because I don't want people to misunderstand and say, well, she didn't really come out and say that. I don't know. I have a way of saying it with my kids, and my kids know that I'm totally serious when I start waving my arms around and going, danger, Will Robinson, danger. Might kick my butt if I do something stupid here, and it is code in our household, and so I want people to be aware that I want people to have knowledge. That's why I'm doing these, okay? I want people to have the knowledge, to be prepared, to make their own decisions on what they're going to do for the level of interactions that they are actually looking for, And I want them to be able to make that conscious decision because, as I said, your interaction with them will have a repercussion, no matter what. No matter what. So that's.
And the other thing is, I think, honestly, your curiosity is not worth the price of admission.
No.
There's so many bad things that can happen as a consequence of getting yourself involved in this and being, headstrong enough that you want to prove it to yourself, if not the entire world, that Bigfoot is real. Excuse me. Here, we're just asking for trouble, and there's really no reason for it. The government's not going to let you prove that they're real. Unless the government lets you prove that they're real, all the skeptics are never going to believe you. They're going to continue to give you a hard time. And who cares? Don't waste your time with them. Don't throw your life away jousting at windmills. Don Quixote wasn't going to any more successful than you're going to be. So just don't waste your time on it. If you want to, satisfy yourself that they exist, you can do that in ways without really intruding on their life and really causing any trouble for them. You can find tree structures, and from there you can find tracks, and you can maybe even get close enough to spot one. But beyond that, I don't recommend that you interact with them at all, because the repercussions on either side could be really, really bad, potentially fatal, and they're just better left alone.
Exactly. I had somebody the other day that lives in Washington State, and they had come upon one of their deer traps, and I had specifically told my group, that I have my own group on Facebook, and I had told them, I said, when you see these traps, leave them alone. Don't touch them. This is how they catch deer. This is when they mass herd them in, for winter. And I said, just leave it alone. Well, this young person in Washington went and started dismantling half of the trap after I had told him not to do it. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, this way I figure they're going to have to interact with me because they're going to have to come back and put it together.
Oh, God. It's not going to be happy interaction.
No, it's not going to be. I begged him and pleaded with him, please do not go back up there because I have a feeling you're going to get smashed, for doing this because you have no interaction as it is, and then you go and you do this to them. They're already feeling the pressures of people moving in closer and closer and closer. That hence my skull tree, that I was telling you about. I have a tree that is just filled with skulls, and that's them letting people know, this is where we're taking our stand. We're tired of being pushed further back. And people need to get that. You can interact, but there comes a point where it's harassment.
Yeah.
And if you harass a bear, would you really do that? I don't think so. would you harass a cougar? Would you sit there and poke it with a stick? I don't think so. And here's my most important point. Would you go and harass your neighbors that you've never met, never spoken to, but they live in that big house up on that hill? Would you go up there and egg that house and really provoke them to come out and have interaction with you? Because you don't know those people. You have no idea what those people have in store for you.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do this. So why go out in the woods and do this?
Yeah, and when you open the door and, when you egg the house and a 9-foot-tall guy that can run 45 miles an hour comes out the door, what are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. You're going to pee your pants, and you're probably going to have a heart attack. You really are. Because these guys... If
you're lucky, because if they get their hands on you, it's going to be a lot worse than a heart attack.
Oh, my God. If anybody has ever seen the pictures that people post up, where the deer's heads are twisted clean up. I had one, where they had literally, it was an elk, a bull elk, and they had taken his head and just literally bent it back by his tail. They were done. It just cracked. There it was. It was done. And I'm trying to make people understand, if they can do that to an animal like that, you are nothing. We're nothing. We're just a soft bag of gush, and that's where it's going to go down in the nitty-gritty part. People, I don't want to scare people, but I also want people to understand, don't feed the bears, don't feed the Sasquatch, don't do these things. And if you insist on doing it, do it for your own safety and your own benefit, okay? Do it away from your home, do it away from your children's play area. For God's sake, please don't do it near your children's play area, Take it away. And make sure that your pets are safe. Make sure that your children are safe, your house is safe, because these things can open doors. These things can break windows. You need to understand that if they want to come through inside the house, they're going to come through, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So.
Yeah, and that's the stern and necessary warning so that people don't get all over exuberant and go, I want to go play with my forest friends. But your forest friends don't want to play with you. Yeah. They want you to stay away from them. And if you start bugging them and interacting with them, you're going to change the way they behave. And then they're going to be even less predictable. It's not a good idea. Don't tug on Superman's cape. Don't spit into the wind. Don't mess with the Lone Ranger. Don't fart in a grizzly bear's face and slap a cougar. And don't ever screw with Bigfoot. Do not hug the Wookiee. Leave the Wookiee alone.
Leave it alone, I told you I've had encounters with people who actually have moved Khats into their backyard, which borders on BLM land, and because they're having interaction with the Sayama, so they're taking the Khats out there and sleeping. They literally move their bedroom out there every night.
Oh, my God.
I'm like, are you just asking for it,
Totally.
And, I'm just flabbergasted when I heard that one. I was just like, somebody needs to get a hold of her psychiatrist.
Yeah, no kidding. Holy God. Well, did we get through the whole list of conversational Bigfoot? Did we get through the whole and everything you had said?
I did. I said what I wanted. You let me do my rant, so thank you.
No, this is all spectacular. As long as you covered everything you wanted to cover, I think I got everything that I wanted to cover, and that I won't get any more death threats. And they probably know enough Bigfoot words now that they won't be so worried. And now the problem will be for them to remember which word it is that they're trying to say. That's your problem, you guys. But again, Khat, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I'm sure the listeners are just going to have a field day with this one, and I'm sure the reactions are going to range all over the place on this. But it's like I'm not censoring anybody. I'm bringing on guests that I think are interesting, and especially ones that know more about certain subjects about Bigfoot than I do, and you definitely fall into that category. And if I can get somebody on here that knows how to speak some of their words. Well, of course, I'm going to get somebody on here to tell you how to speak some of their words. And it's up to you if you want to believe that they actually have words and they can speak them or not. That's up to you to make the decision on. But I brought the guest on. She told you how to speak some basic Bigfoot. So the next time you run into the woods and you see one and he steps out from behind the big tree in front of you and gives you the scowl, you don't have to be so worried about getting picked up and used like a baseball bat. You know which words that you're supposed to try and say to him. And after it's all over, you can come back and tell us how well it worked. And if you ended up being close friends and like playing pinochle, or or if he just looked at you like you didn't know how to speak Bigfoot very well and walked away, it'll be interesting to see the reaction. And anyway, again, thanks a lot for being on the show. You're just a treasure. It's so great to have you on, Khat. And hopefully we'll have you on again here at some point in the future. And all the listeners out there, thanks for checking out the show and watching it again. And we got more great shows coming up here in the future, so stay with us. And in the meanwhile, be kind to everyone. Be safe out there. And God help you, whatever you do, do not hug the Wookiee. Take care, everyone. Bye.